I was in a band in high school, VZed, called Disposable Heroes. Yes, like the Metallica song.
Oh, man, I was in a band called Captain Skeeter and the Shrimp Shack Shooters.
Wow.
I was rhythm guitar.
Wow.
Well, the other day we thought about starting a side project called, this is seriously what we were going to call it, Pain in the Shut Up. That was going to be the name of the band. Thank you, everybody! We were Pain in the... shut up.
snoCast! Hello, everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of Donkey Kong Month snoCast, all super special 4-man cast. This is just like all the different faces of everybody. If you missed part 1, go check that out. That they're just gonna keep doing faces. I love it. We talked about Donkey Kong Country, the original trilogy on the SNES. But welcome back with me again, VZed, Perrydactyl, and DjaliGoat. Yes, let's do. Okay, we're doing the
Hollywood Squares.
That's beautiful. So we talked about the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy last time.
Which by the way is available on Wii U eShop. You should go buy it.
Yes,
That is
everyone,
true.
if you have a Wii U, go buy it. It's good.
All three of them while you're at it, because they're all really like good games.
I think they might even be in a
ranging
bundle.
from
I'm not
great to
sure.
good.
All three are on Wii U. They also
And
put
Game Boy games.
Yeah, the Donkey Kong Lands.
Which they haven't been. They haven't been in so many years. Like for some reason, they mysteriously vanished. So like, buy them
There's
now
a weird-
before they buy
There's actually
them
a
now
weird
before they
legal
disappear
reason
again.
for that.
I was going to
There's
say
like a weird
they
legal
used to be on
explanation for
Wii, and then they
Took them off without warning.
Yep.
It's because their original. It's something to do with their original contract with now Microsoft-owned Rare was that they could release them, but only on one console as per their contract. But then when they had the Wii functionality on the Wii U, that was technically a breach of contract, so they had to like take them down while they renegotiated or whatever. So yeah, it was like some weird like
silly
legal skullduggery, and that I heard secondhand. So that might not be totally factual, but that's like the reason that's floating around the most.
Way. Consensus was.
I believe it. If Microsoft is involved, they'll mess you up.
So, anyway, good recovery. I think the consensus was we absolutely love the trilogy. Donkey Kong Country 2 in particular expanded the game phenomenally. 3 was good to an extent. So now we're moving on. We're kind of going past the Super Nintendo and beyond. So we're going to kind of dive in and talk about the other Donkey Kong Country, quote-unquote, because we're going to start with Donkey Kong 64, which, is it a country game? Is it not a country game? I mean, kind of. No?
Well, I mean,
Not
is Mario
really.
is Mario 64 a Mario game?
A Mario
Kinda,
Country game?
like
Mario World game.
a Mario World game? No, but it's its own like spin. It's its own beast. It's the 64 genre.
It's only in. It isn't in the sense that it's like we use the word country in this context to sort of imply a side scroller with increasing challenge as you go.
That's a good point.
With like hidden collectibles along the way, whereas Donkey Kong 64 is so much more of just an adventure game. Like, you know, there's this big old world. There's no pressure to like, you know, go and do things other than there's stuff to go and do, right? And then you can do it at your own pace.
Call it
and
Donkey Kong Adventure.
yeah, well,
Donkey
something like
Kong
that.
Land.
I mean, that was kind of like what you just did.
wait.
You like stuck 64 after things, and then it sort of implied that it
That
was
mean-
now a 3D
That's
platformer.
what Jolly was saying. It's the 64 genre of game.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's what I meant when I said it. I was like, it's part of the
3D
64
exploration
series.
adventure. Yeah.
And if you slap 64 onto it, that you just know what you're getting yourself into.
So, what are you guys' thoughts? What do you think of Donkey Kong 64?
I love it.
It's really good. Like, I'm not a big fan of 3D platformers, and I really liked it.
I played that game so much. I enjoy it endlessly. I love the single player. I also played the multiplayer a ton with my friends, even though that's like not even like the good part of the game. But I played I played hundreds of hours of multiplayer, and I know all the secrets and the invisible walls, and it's amazing good times. Like the single player game is
Not sure
So-
if I should commit to my DK64 video is out. by
It
now?
might.
By this
Maybe
point,
not.
maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, it should be if I'm efficient. But yeah, like I mean, it's pretty easy to see how much I love that game. All you got to do is go watch my video that's totally out and is doing very well.
And will be in this video annotated question.
Yeah, so maybe I can talk about why I love the game, or maybe.
See, he's actually cheating. He hasn't played the game. He's just waiting for us to talk about it before he makes the video.
Don't even.
He's like, yeah, tell me, why do you guys like DC?
Yeah, guys. Oh, yeah, I totally agree. Writes the script.
What was that about? What's that level called?
It would be the first time.
Ooh.
You guys picking on me today.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
Donkey Kong 64 for me, I remember getting it as a kid and really wanting it and really loving it. What's interesting for me now, though, is I haven't gone back and played it in years and years and years and years. So it would be really interesting for me to go back and play it. Because for me, I feel like the first 3 or so levels I remember a lot, up through like the factory. And then like late game DK64 is nothing but like a faint memory to me. I really don't remember anything about like Fungi Forest or anything like that.
It'll all come right back to you.
Yeah,
I'm in the same boat.
Right.
Yeah.
Just the other night, Perry was like, "Hey, is the DK64 soundtrack worth getting?" And I was just like, "Yeah." And then he did, and then he was like, "What tracks are worth listening to?" And I'm like, "Listen to Crystal Caves." And then he was just like, "Dude, it's all coming back to me now."
Yeah, I remembered all the soundtrack and stuff. It was great.
Yeah, that was exactly what happened to me when I played it for this video. I sat down and I 101%ed it, which was awesome. I'd never done that before. But like, just all of it, I thought totally held up. There were like 3 snags that I didn't like about the game, but like everything else, it's huge, it's complex,
it's a big game,
it's massive, it's a monolith of a game, and yet it's constructed so well, so much better than I think a lot of other N64 games were around that time.
Yeah.
And I think it just holds up, like there's no two ways about it. It just totally does.
And so, with Donkey Kong Country, the weird thing about it is, it's a Donkey Kong game, but a lot of the ways like that it came to be was that it kind of evolved from Banjo games, because it's like it came after Banjo-Tooie, and so a lot of the stuff implemented in that
after Kazooie, before
Kazooie, and it came out after Kazooie, and like a lot of the stuff like it kind of expanded off the Banjo game as opposed to like expanding off the Donkey Kong Country games, because it was a 3D platformer, and Banjo was the first one that Rare did. For the N64, and so like you see a lot of like cool things, like they have warp pads around the world, which you see again implemented in Tooie, how they kind of like they have like the overworld, but you can kind of warp around it really well. It's like how to make a big area also feel like you can get anywhere really easily as long as you know where you're going. And they have the 3D worlds. So what separated from Kazooie is they were like, okay, well this time we have 5 different characters. And each of the 5 characters, like in a kind of like a Metroidvania kind of way, could open up different areas of levels, and like each had their own abilities. So it's like, you had like Tiny Kong, who could fly or shrink in size to suit her mood, and she could get into her own areas. And
sorry, keep going.
Yeah, and then with Chunky being able to like lift boulders, and they really they made the world like accessible in different ways to the different characters, which was pretty cool.
What I notice about that is like, because when you're talking about 3D platformers, it all comes back to Mario 64. The first, the game that sort of invented the concept, and that game sort of did the same sort of thing. There's different areas that you can access at different times, right? Like when you pick a star, it's like, the level's set up for that star, and then you're going to get it, and then you're going to be done, and then you're going to set up the level for another one, right? But like Donkey Kong 64 was like, why are we doing this whole restarting the level thing? Let's just, have all of these things accessible. You just got to figure out who needs to be where, and then you can go for it, right? And that's what I loved about it, because it made it feel so much bigger, like so much more like a whole, rather than just like a series of chunks of game, Yeah,
it didn't feel so much as levels as it did feel like more of a world that you were exploring. Because like even in the world, you could find like things like switch your characters. You could find Cranky's hut, and like it really felt like each world was like not just a level that you selected from the menu screen. It really felt that you were exploring your way through the game, as like with this giant Donkey Kong island.
Yeah,
that was another game that I had the strategy guide for, which I think those are like the only two strategy guides I ever owned was DKC 3 and 64. So I did beat DK64 101%, and I remember loving it and thinking I was really accomplished and stuff. But it is just funny to me because I haven't touched it in so long, so it would be interesting. Yeah. I remember. The first 3 levels especially, though, are still the ones that stick out to me. I think maybe that's... I say the late game ones don't, but it might just be because those first 3 were really memorable. Those were the first 3 levels where you start unlocking the characters. So that's part of it, too.
That was another thing I really loved, how, like... Because, yeah, they have 5 characters, but you had to find each one in the world. Because, the game starts off, and, like, here's another... Like, the Donkey Kong 64, they really took, like, the cartoony, like... All the characters in Donkey Kong Country Trilogy were like more characters than your traditional Mario game. Same thing with Mario 64 and Donkey Kong Country. Like the characters in Donkey Kong Country are so like developed for like platformer characters. Like even at a one example I always like using is like even the character select screen when you have to choose the different Kongs. All the Kongs are like really excited and they're all jumping up and down with their hands like pick me, and then like Donkey Kong's like pick me, I'm Donkey Kong, I'm the best, and Diddy's like no you want to pick me, and then you like switch over to Chunky and he's like oh no I don't want to do this, and then he looks over his side and he's like just pick Tiny instead. He's like I don't want to do it.
I love that.
Chunky.
Like all the characters and then, of course, like, the 5 different characters, they're all, like, Lanky was, like, all the clown and zany, and Tiny was, like, hip-hop and cool, and, like, Chunky was, like, a big, strong goofball.
Donkey is just, like, so confident, and Diddy is, like, such the cool guy, but he doesn't, like, realize it until he gets the opportunity. Like, I love when you pick him in the barrel, he's just kind of, like, looking around, just like, wait a minute, really? Yeah, and Tiny's just like, whatever, I got this. Don't even like worry about it. You actually get a sense that they have personalities rather than just are a bunch of different movesets you can use to get through a level, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that, like, I love that because that's just such a small detail that like probably took realistically a lot of effort to put into the game. And, like, even the enemies, like, there's so many cool cutscenes in that game with, like, K. Rool, and he's all Dr. Evil, sitting on his chair with his fingers, and they gave him this big, menacing, like, red eye, and it, like, the way he talks. And then, like, the other thing I always really loved is his Kremlins were such, like, goofball, your typical, like, Saturday morning cartoon henchmen. And they would, like even like in the boss fight, like they're trying to like ring the bell and they accidentally break it, and like all the time they're just messing up things, and K. Rool freaks out at them. It's hilarious.
I still say that, like, and I talk about this in the video, is one of the things that I think DK64 did that a lot of other games in the era and before it didn't really do was have a really story-heavy intro. Because, like, when you think about the intro of Mario 64, it's like an inciting incident that happens off-screen. Peach is kidnapped, and they send you a fake letter, and it's like, oh, it's Bowser again. And, like, Banjo-Kazooie is like, Tootie gets kidnapped, and then you gotta go save her. You know, like, that's it. Right. But with Donkey Kong 64, it was like, here are all of the bad guys. You're gonna see K. Rool and his henchmen, and they are bringing a big old death laser to blow up your island, you know? And then, not only that, but K. Rool then has a meeting with his lieutenants, like the captains of his army, basically, and then he gives them a bunch of orders, and they give him, like, a sit rep and whatever, and he's just like, okay, good, seems like everything's in place. And then just from doing that, we see their headquarters, we see all their henchmen, and suddenly the enemies become more than just pylons. They are, like, the target. They are the people who are targeting us, who are trying to hurt us, you know? But in Banjo-Kazooie, we didn't get that, because the enemies felt like, you know, these mindless creatures that Grunty just kind of pointed in our direction and hoped that they would hurt us, you know? But, like, in Donkey Kong 64, the situation is so real, because you see it happening when you enter every level. You see their progress and how you slowly foil them, you know, step by step, right?
And again, like, from a story, like, to compare it to the original trilogy, like, you had the first game where you start off on Donkey Kong Island, and then, like, Alec, like you say in your video, you progress and then eventually get to where K. Rool, like, industrialize the island and you get to, like, his territory. In 3D space and as a 3D platformer, you get such more, like, a real feeling of that kind of adventure, because, like, you can literally see his island at all times, like, just sitting over there, and, like, you can, when you finally venture over your way to it and then get inside of it, like, that's all you. It's not just you selecting a level from the menu screen. It's a very different feeling.
That's true when you go to Frantic Factory and you have to go onto his little thing to get to it, and it's like, whoa. And the whole mood changes. It starts raining around his ship.
And there's bats and stuff that are flying around your face. And...
Yeah, definitely. What do you guys think of the fact that it was so huge and massive? A lot of complaints that people say about DK64 is there was too much to collect, too much collectibles. It took the collectathon too far.
I say there wasn't enough. Seriously, like my only complaint about the game is that it wasn't longer. Like, I love it the way it is. You know, like maybe some of it could have been tightened up here or there, but I love the big levels. I love all the different stuff to collect. Like, it just feels so much richer.
Because if you named all the things you're collecting, I mean,
you got your color bananas, you got your
it would
banana
take the rest
coins,
of our podcast.
You got your banana medals, golden bananas, keys. There's all kinds of stuff.
Crystals, the crowns, ammo for your guns, everything.
I think a lot of so what happens in for anyone who hasn't played in Donkey Kong 64, when you go into a level with one character, you can get a bunch of stuff, but then you have 4 other characters on top of that, and then they each have their own set of stuff for a level. And a lot of times, it's cool when different characters can be accessible to their own areas and they do their own thing in the level. But then sometimes when you have to go back and collect the same thing that's like a mundane banana bunch or something that exists for all the characters, I think some people thought it got a little too repetitive. But I honestly think if they were ever to make another 3D platformer, which Playtonic Games is making a new successor to Banjo-Kazooie, if they wanted to improve off of that when in a game with multiple characters, which I heard their new Playtonic Banjo-Kazooie successor is going to have a bunch of multiple characters, the way to that's a very easy fix. Still keep areas that are very catered, accessible to different characters, but you don't need to make the same banana bunch exists for every character in the very beginning of the level. You can cut back a little bit on just make sure that not every collectible is a repetitive collectible, and other things in the game. I actually, a lot of people complain there's too much. I loved it because it was there was more game, and I really loved the fact that the whole world felt connected, and I really loved playing my way through it. So where was I going with this?
The thing that keeps the levels from feeling repetitive is that they have different subsections to them. You know, every level isn't just one giant area that you move around in. There are multiple areas that you move around between with aesthetic transitions, right?
Well, there's only 7 levels.
There's 7 levels, 8 if you include Hideout Helm, which is kind of
but
half
it feels like 5 different levels within that level for each
character. And the one that comes off as the weakest is Crystal Caves, because it's just one big, massive, open space that gets really repetitive. It's one color scheme the whole way through, and that, I think, is easily the weakest level in the game. It's the only part of the game I really don't like, straight up. But even then, there's still fun stuff to do there. It's just getting to those things is kind of a pain.
I always really liked Explore the Factory. That one was always really, really cool. And I think what I was going to say before was that a lot of the collectibles, in order to improve upon 64, some of the collectibles, some of the bonus barrels just became too much, and some of them were a little bit ridiculous. And another thing that I think that was a technical limitation of the game was because the game, when you had bought it, it had to come with the RAM pack or else it couldn't even run, which was unfortunate because I know they lost a lot of money that way. But another technical limitation of the game was that they had to reuse a lot of assets. So they had to reuse a lot of the bonus barrels. They had to reuse boss fights, which was unfortunate because I guess ideally you would want a brand new boss each time, and when you reuse something, it kind of wears off the shock factor the second time. It's oh well, I fought this, and even if you make it harder, which is great, it feels like you've already seen it before. And so, but that's not necessarily that's not you guys should have changed that, because I understand that it was probably a technical limitation, because from what I understand, they packed that game to the brim, and they had to do stuff like that to save. And there was a lot of I'll talk about it maybe a little after. They did a lot of cool stuff, even with the sound design in the Banjo-Kazooie games and the Donkey Kong games, to cut back on memory space, because these weren't disc-based games for PlayStation. These were still cartridge-based, so the space amount was very, very limited. So even with things with sound effects, they had to find very clever ways to make sound files compressed. So then they would reuse a sound file with different filters and stuff.
Yeah. What do you think, Perry? Did you think it was too big, too much to collect? Did it get repetitive, or was it? All right.
I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I haven't played the game since it came out when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm only basing what I know about the game from my childhood, like my first experience. I don't remember playing it again after beating it because it was such a beefy game and there's a lot of stuff to do.
Right.
I thought it was really cool. I mean, I'm not one to really enjoy like collectible games, but I remember really liking it despite that.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on DK64?
Really like the K. Rool fight at the end of that game too.
I was gonna mention the K. Rool fight. Yeah,
it's as good as 2, I'd say.
It's
long.
They really did.
Took a day off.
They made it really like it's almost like a perfect ending to that game because like it's you. And another thing that they did, and I think they like built off of Banjo as well, because like in like Banjo, like you're introduced to Grunty early on, and she's constantly talking to you through the game and is building her up to be a villain. They also build, like Alex said, they build K. Rool up to be a villain, and then like he captured all of Donkey's friends, and you have to like through the game, it's like you unlock one, and then you unlock another one, and like by the end you have all 5, and then so you have to fight K. Rool, but it's not just like you can't just go in anymore and like beat him. Like you have to. He has 5 different phases for each different Kong, which is like ridiculous. It's almost like 5 different bosses in one.
One thing I loved about it,
it's really creative. I'll let you talk more about it.
The thing I loved most about it, that I kind of like, I remembered what the boss fight was from when I was a kid, but I forgot how they sort of build up to it, and that's with like the biggest fake out of all time, because like you're playing the game, and K. Rool is this big, regal, like intimidating figure who's like sitting on his throne, like calculatingly viewing the battlefield, moving his pawns around, you know. And then at the end of the game, he panics and he gets into this ship, and then it gets brought down. And you're just like, what could possibly be in there? Like, is he gonna like, you know, pull out like some magic sword, sorcery, like whatever, you know? But no, you're in a boxing match. Like he's got the shorts on and the big like gloves, and he's got the bells and the crowd cheering for him and booing.
Yeah.
And I was just like, when I get in there, I'm just like, okay. And then it works, you know? Like, it's still intimidating because he's trying to beat the crap out of you, you know? Like, he's just itching for the chance to run up there and just pummel you into the floor. And, it's a totally different move, but it suits it so well because it's goofy, it's huge, and it's fun, just like the rest of that game.
You're right that it's kind of like a perfect cap on the game because it has that feel of just the goofiness, too, of the whole game.
And even like they build up K. Rool such as like a character, like they really make him feel more like a character in that game because like you have like he's like narcissistic. He has the castle and the giant cardboard cutout of himself, which is actually boss. And then
yeah,
like,
that's true.
And then you
sorry,
the boxing ring fight, like he comes out and like he's almost as like equally entertained. Like he's looking at his minions. He's like, "Look at guys, cheer for me!" And he's like so like in love with himself. And it's like he's such a great character. Like as a villain, like it's a lot more like Bowser stole a princess, and like he shows up later in the stage and you fight him 3 times. But like K. Rool is like he's pandering to the crowd. He's not like he's very flawed. He's goofy, but like he's also very intimidating because like this is the real deal. It's like he's gloves are on. He's taking care of you. Gloves are off, gloves are on, pun. But he's ready to take care of business himself now, and like you have to fight him, and like it's a pretty challenging fight, and you really have to like through the game you find instances in each of the levels. It's like, oh, Tiny can do this in this kind of situation to get Tiny, and like Chunky can like do his wind up punch to like do things, and so you learn how to use all the Kong's abilities, and so in each fight of the game, like each fight of the K. Rool fight, they're really like, oh, guess what? You have to use like your knowledge of the characters and like their individual skills, which I always thought was really, really cool because it wasn't just like in Donkey Kong Country Trilogy, like if you could be any Kong and just jump on the enemy's head, but in this one it's like, okay, we have characters with different skills, we want you to use them to beat this boss.
Well, just like the levels felt like 5 subsets where you were each character, the final boss was the same way. You had the 5 different sections to do it.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else? Sorry. What was that, VZed?
Nice. I was just finished.
Nice. It's good.
Yeah, and then the final thing about that game, again, like Alec was talking about the music. They built off like the Banjo-Kazooie. Like this time around, it wasn't Dave Weiss or Evelyn Fisher. They had a new composer, Grant Kirkhope, and he had worked on Banjo-Kazooie. And he has a lot of sound design tricks where, like, if you go, like, a lot of the music in the game gets changed, like, again with like different filters, and like it's played differently, but for like to set the mood for different areas, like if you're above ground or underwater, maybe you're in a cave, and like it really builds like the world as a big cohesive unit together when the music's kind of interconnected like that.
I think it's Kirkhope's best work, personally.
Kirkhope really did a good job designing like the sound for those games and making like just how it transitions to each area. You know, like the sounds themselves are like very memorable. It really like did a good job for that game.
Grant's got his own style, and it's funny because I didn't know who he was until recently, but now like knowing those games and knowing him and knowing his personality a little better, it's like like you just listen to any of his work and you're like, that's Grant. You know, that's so Grant. So it's just cool.
His own show on the Disney Network.
Yeah. Great music, absolutely. And again, that's kind of a theme that we've accrued over the whole series, is the music makes the game that much fuller and better.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And they used it like in different as technology evolved, like to the N64, and you could transition to like different areas like that. The music, like they made it more multi-purpose as well, and they did cooler things with it as technology evolved, which I can really appreciate. Like it really shows how games developed over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then, that was what, 99?
Yep.
Then it's like what, 10 years more without a DK game?
Yeah. Hey, hold on. Hold on. Let's back up for a second. Did you forget about freaking Congo?
The bongo games.
Yeah, come on, dudes.
I never.
Tell
played
me
that.
you guys didn't miss out on that.
I never actually played those games.
I never played.
I have them.
I did not play another Donkey Kong game until Returns, and even then I was like 4 years late on Returns.
How was the Congo Bongo game, Perry?
I mean, it's all right. I mean, like the music one's just like Guitar Hero, but like with bongos. But then they have like really cool beat 'em up game. It's like an action beat 'em up game just with the Congos. And I thought that was a really cool game. And I think it still holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I actually played it at a friend's house, like both of them, and the music one was just a game I did not like at all. But like the action beat 'em up one, it's not even comparable like to any other game. It's kind of its own thing, really.
Yeah. It's really cool, though, I thought.
Well, there you go. So then...
Yeah, but it was weird, and then, moving on, obviously, Rareware was the last that we had seen of Donkey Kong Country, and they were supposed to have a Donkey Kong Country game on the GameCube. It was supposed to be, like, a Donkey Kong racing game, which was, I guess, supposed to be a... Yeah, well, like, even if you buy... Like, I still have the box for the original GameCube. If you look on it, there's pictures of that game on the box that you buy GameCube for. And it's like, this is going to be on GameCube. And then, unfortunately, stuff happened with Rare and Microsoft and Nintendo. And so that game never came to fruition. And so I'm assuming, like, who knows if we're Rare going to, like, the same way Nintendo made Mario Sunshine, maybe Rare would have made another Donkey Kong, like, 3D platformer, but we'll never know. Like, it kind of just got... Yeah. Skipped out on that generation, and like the Donkey Kong IP, they were like, okay, we need to do something with DK, let's pass it on, and they made the Bongo game instead of whatever Rare was going to do with it.
Yeah, and then of course there's like the most terrifying character redesign in Donkey Kong Racing, Tiny Kong. Snow, throw a picture of the new Tiny Kong up there.
Oh, don't do it! Please don't do it! Please don't do it! I honestly think Nintendo must have hired someone from DeviantArt to design the new Tiny Kong.
Tiny Kong, yeah.
And she's in the baseball game, and it's off. She's taller than Waluigi, even though she was all about supposed to be small. And she's like, they try to make her all sex appeal as a monkey, and it's just wrong.
Does not happen.
It's bad.
So, real talk, though.
They ruined her so bad.
When they announced Donkey Kong Country Returns at E3, I freaking threw my fists up in the air and danced around the room because I was so excited.
Yeah, I was very excited for that too.
Yeah,
I was excited, but I was also skeptic because at the time, I really love Super Mario World. It's one of my favorite games, and it was like 20 years ago. Blueprints for an amazing Mario game, and then like Mario Brothers Wii came out, and like it was cool if you played with friends, but as a single player game, it had nowhere near the amount of depth that a Mario game like that I liked like from my childhood. It was just not the same, and so I was very skeptical when they were like, "We're going to make a new Donkey Kong Country," because I was like, but they already did Mario Brothers, and at first I was like skeptic, and then like it was being done by Retro, who had done Metroid Prime, and I was like, well, they've never done a platformer before. Is this just going to be another Mario Brothers Wii? And I'm very happy to say that I was entirely wrong, and then it ended up being like one of, if not my favorite games on the Wii.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wasn't skeptical. I was just excited. I had never heard of Retro, so that part of it didn't bother me. It was just like, I'm just pumped. I'm excited.
I was kind of the opposite camp. I was in the opposite camp of Jolly because I really liked the Prime games when they came out. So I was like, "Yo, let's go, DK."
Yeah.
The Prime games were fantastic, but I just was scared of them pulling out like what they did with Mario Brothers Wii and making a watered down.
Well, it's that's true. I think in the back of my mind that was a concern as well.
Once again between Perry and Jolly here, because I was a huge Metroid Prime fan, and when I heard they were making the next Donkey Kong game, I was kind of like, isn't Donkey Kong over? Because I wasn't really playing video games at that point anymore. One of the reasons I started my show was to like convince myself to go back and play video games again, and I didn't actually play Donkey Kong Country Returns until last summer, like when I did it for my 10 mini reviews video back in last July, right? So I mean, like I was not on the ball with Retro, but then I played it and it changed my tone because I really like that game.
Tell me what you think about motion controls. A lot of people, that's their biggest complaint. Oh, it was supposed to be perfect, except of those stupid motion controls. Personally, I had no problem. In fact, after you got used to it and stuff, like I liked it. I thought it felt fluid. I thought it was fine.
It depends on the game and how the game does it. Like I think Skyward Sword overdid it.
Well, I mean it specifically in Returns.
Well, what was there? Like
it was to twist it to roll.
Yeah, that's one thing. And I think the game did it properly because it used the motion controls as a button command and rather than just like a one-to-one like tracing around the screen sort of thing. Because like I said, I think Skyward Sword overdid it. But conversely, No More Heroes is like one of the best games I've ever played, partially because they did motion controls right. And that was minimal application. And it was more for a single command, which is what Returns did. So I think they did the right thing there for sure.
Yeah,
but
thankfully,
Perry,
I'm in this camp here that's like, motion controls, I like them to a degree, but when you're making a very precision-based platforming game, I think there's a lot of room for error with motion controls when your roll is not set to a button. Rather, you have to flick the Wiimote. And I think there's a lot more room for error, or at least in maybe I'm not the best Donkey Kong Returns player or something, but like for me at least, I felt like I did not want the motion controls in the game, and I was very, very thankful when they remade it for the 3DS because that to me is the best version of the game.
Because you also had to shake to blow. You could blow air, so you also had to shake it to do that.
You're lucky the Wiimote didn't have its own mic. They definitely would have made you have to blow into it.
Yeah, totally.
I would not put that past them.
They did it in 3D World, right?
Well, they did it on the DS all the time.
Yeah.
Phoenix Wright, Trace Memory, like all those games. Destined for fingerprints and then you need to blow the powder right.
I agree with Perry. I did not want, thankfully the way that it was implemented as the role, it was very easy to get used to, and it wasn't that hard to do, but I did not want it there. I wanted to press the button. It was...
Yeah.
And then in Tropical Freeze, they did do it to a button, so it ended up being much better.
Yeah, and they give you, different control schemes, too, in case you want to, if you're used to the old games or, the newer ones, which was great. And, it also felt very well to play on the gamepad.
Yeah, it did. I loved it on the gamepad.
I love the gamepad. By the way, I don't know if we...
Before we jump ship here to Tropical Freezes, I know we have a lot to talk about on that game. But Returns, I felt like the enemies, the design and the whole oh, it's evil totems. Like, I felt like that was really rushed. Like, I felt like they could have made something cooler, or like, I just didn't care for it at all. Like, even when I replay, I'm just like, who cares? They're evil totems that possess animals. Like, it's just like, it felt very, very lame.
See, I remember watching JonTron way back in the day did a review of Returns, and he hated it, or at least complained about it, and he was like, let's replace King K. Rool with the block of wood. But I hadn't played the game yet, and I hadn't like watched anything about it, and I legitimately thought the bad guy was like a 2x4, and I was just like, that sounds dumb. And then I like asked my friends, like, is it true they just replaced him with a block of wood? And they're like, yeah. But then it turns out they were just as cynical as like John and I were being. And I played it, and the totems seemed so much better than what I was imagining.
Well, if you think a block of wood, yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. And so I have no problem with those bad guys. I think they were fine. Like, I think they were an interesting like departure from just like.
Give me the Kremlings, dog. Where the Kremlings at?
Owned by Rare. That's where they at.
I agree with Perry.
I would have preferred Kremlings, but I also didn't mind the tikis.
Sure,
well, here's the thing.
I like the new angle that they bring, because like it used to just be like brute force and army invading, but now it's like, you know, hypnotism. It's like they're coming from the inside.
It was stupid.
I agree with Perry for the most part. I thought like when you look at like how much of a villain and like character built, even like in the old games, like how the K. Rool army, like they were kind of personified as like villains, but like with the planks of wood, it's just kind of like, who even are they and why? Like you didn't really care about them as villains. None of them had any personality. Like but the one thing I did really like was that like they didn't make you fight the actual planks of wood themselves until the final boss.
That was cool.
The thing that saved it was that all the bosses weren't even the planks of wood. They were just jungle animals, which were all really, really cool boss fights. The robot chicken. Oh my gosh. Like,
I love that.
He was ridiculous.
I didn't like that boss.
But yeah, I did not think that they didn't really have any villain presence. It's just kind of like, well, who am I really fighting? It wasn't like, oh, I'm fighting Bowser, I'm fighting K. Rool. It's like, I don't even know. But
a little out of place.
The other complaint I have about Returns was, and it's not really a full complaint, because like I thought the music in that game was very, very good. I liked that they remixed a lot of the original Donkey Kong Country songs, but like it just didn't feel the same as like the old Donkey, because Donkey Kong Country. I mean, this is the second episode, I'm guessing. So, like, if you watch the one about the Donkey Kong trilogy, one of the things to take away from that is the original Donkey Kong Country on Super Nintendo. It pushed the sound design of the Super Nintendo to like its max, and they had like songs that like pushed technical limitations. They were also like some of the most catchy songs in video games. Like they're still like very popular today, and it's hard to think of any like standout like songs from Returns besides like the remixes of the old ones. Yeah. And like the music, like it just wasn't as good, and like it had a big impact on the trilogy for me anyways. But on the flip side, I thought the level design for Returns was some of the best, and this is what saved the game for me, and totally proved me wrong, because I was very skeptical about the game. The level design in Returns on the Wii is some of the best level design in like any platformers you could ever play, and they got they got incredibly creative, and they weren't afraid to be challenging. And it started with Returns, like they were very faithful to the original trilogy, because the original trilogy was like, it was more challenging than your average platforming game, and they were like, we want to keep that for Donkey Kong Country fans. Like, this isn't just new Super Mario Brothers where we take Mario that everyone loves and we just change it and make it more accessible. They were like, this is a game for like the gamers who played the original Donkey Kong Country. And the level design, they just blew my mind time and time again. Like, so many of the levels, and there's some levels that are reminiscent of old ones. Like I mentioned how before I like the Ripsaw level in Donkey Kong Country 3. They have one where like a bunch of fuzzies are chasing you up a tree. Oh, yeah. But like it starts off that they're chasing you sideways. So like they got very more creative with levels and how they transition. You're running first to the side and then up. And like there is another level that I always remember like blowing my mind in Returns was it's a minecart level, which I was very happy they brought back minecart levels, as well as they had rocket levels too, which is their own new spizzle. But the level that I really liked is they have this minecart level where you're on a minecart, but above you they have a train on a train track, and a new game mechanic that they included to Returns was that you could like cling on to surfaces that were grassy. So on the underside of the train, speeding along through the level, you could climb on, like you could cling onto it, but below you was a minecart, like series of minecarts that you could ride. So you were constantly switching between the two, and it was like the next step of intensity in a minecart level. I was like, this is like absolutely bonkers.
They did
like,
take minecart stuff to a new level. I loved the ones where like you're rolling in an egg and you're going down a cliff on the minecart and things like that.
That is what made me stop and go, wow.
Yeah. And rocket levels as well. The rocket barrel levels I always found really cool.
Flappy Bird.
There are two different kinds of minecarts now. There are ones that you ride inside, but there are also ones where Donkey Kong's on it like a surfboard. So if you jump off the one on the surfboard, you can jump out of the minecart, whereas a normal minecart, you jump with it.
And that goes back to DKC1. They did that in DKC1 as well.
Yeah, it was
the first one
really
you were in it, and then the second one you could jump out.
Yeah, it was really, really cool.
So that was cool when they did that.
I really liked they had a beach level in that game, and it was really cool with stuff coming at you from the background, and like cannonballs and stuff, and you had to climb the pirate ships. And another level I really liked was when they had the tidal wave from the background that could knock you off the level, and you had to like hide in front of rocks, like because on Super Nintendo, like Donkey Kong Country 2. How I kind of said how it evolved, like concepts for levels, like we're going to add wind, and we're going to add like a hot air balloon, and we're going to add all the and animal bodies, and we're going to make new levels. I feel like on the Wii, because it's been so long since there was like an actual limit-pushing Donkey Kong Country game, they had so many new, fresh ideas for new, outstanding level designs that like never really were done, at least to the extent that Returns did it before, and like it completely blew me away.
They got really creative with it. I love the silhouette levels. It's just things like that where they're just creative and cool.
As much as I love the level design in those games, I feel like the mechanical design kept it kind of far away from like me as a gamer. Like as much like I think the game is really good, but I think it lacks the personality that 64 or the original DKC games had. Like everything felt so far away from me, and like everything was always happening, and it wasn't like I was stopping to enjoy the game. I was just reacting, which in itself is fun, but there was no like chance for me to like sit back and get to know the world, as it were. Like it was always the challenge.
That's a good
point. Well, like and that's fine. Like I think that the game is just it's a series of challenges that you can feel good about finishing, more so than Donkey Kong Country 3, I think, in a lot of ways. But I don't think that it was as personal a game for me.
It's hard. Returns is hard.
Yeah. It's hard, and I love it because I was so glad that they made a challenging platforming game. It stayed faithful to because the old games were challenging, and they didn't just want to like stay faithful to the old games. They wanted to. I honestly respect Retro to no end because they looked at Donkey Kong Country and they were like, yeah, we're going to remake a series, bring it back, but we don't want to just like water it down and bring an experience that people have already had. We want to like expand off of it. So we're going to make even more challenging stuff. We're going to have new game mechanics, like we're going to like the ability to cling on to surfaces and stuff, and they like changed the way that you played. And they created some new awesome levels. And like I know, Alec, you just said that maybe you didn't get to like experience the worlds enough, but I honestly think that in a different sense, they added a lot more collectibles to each world. Like, because now you didn't just have the Kong letters; you had the puzzle pieces, and the Jiggies. I think it was probably another throwback to another franchise,
right?
A Nintendo franchise that people loved. I was like, why did they make it shiny golden puzzle pieces? Because it's Jiggies. They were totally like another throwback to old Rare, and they got really creative. Like, you really had to explore each level. Maybe you'd have to replay it, but like you really at least if you're trying to get all the collectibles in the game, you really had to familiarize yourself.
Well, and I do think that it kind of set the groundwork for Tropical Freeze. Like obviously they took it in a new direction while also staying faithful. I like that bonus rooms were definite throwbacks to the first game.
Yeah.
Like bonus rooms were like to a T almost. DKC1 bonus rooms, you know.
Yeah.
But then they expanded things with puzzle pieces, etc., and it totally laid groundwork for Tropical Freeze. So, like I said before, I think we're like chomping at the bit to talk about Tropical Freeze because it's.
I'm not. I haven't played it.
Oh man. Okay, and I was wondering. I didn't remember if you said had played it or not.
I own it, but I
miss
haven't
Snow.
played it yet because I'm like the worst.
It's phenomenal. It really
Yeah, like as good as Returns is, I honestly think Tropical Freeze is like
See, I want to
way
finish.
way
Dude,
better.
it is
I want to finish
miles
Returns
better.
first because I'm like 2/3 of the way through that one. But it's still
And
not
then-
the time,
Yeah.
and it's
So are we-
hard.
Has it
Tropical
happened?
Freeze is so
Has
good.
it happened? Are we talking about Tropical Freeze now? Can we just jump? Or
Yeah,
what
do it
else
up.
do we have? What else
I'll
do we have
watch.
to say about
Okay.
Returns?
This is a
Nothing,
spectator
let's
sport
go.
now.
No, we're going
Okay,
on.
so
Move
Tropical
on.
Freeze. I know Perry. Like we were just complaining, like, oh, the villains in Returns weren't even like whatever. Very first thing that Tropical Freeze like corrects is like they do a big
Boss
cinematic.
dudes.
They introduce you to like the game's final villain first, and they like show all the enemies invading, and like suddenly it's like they didn't use the Kremlings again, but like this time they made villains that were they were very thematic, they were identifiable, and they were like epic, and they gave them their own
They're
theme
great.
song, and like the enemies in like a lot of the enemies in like Returns were all just kind of like jungle creatures, and in Tropical Freeze does a mix between the jungle creatures and like the Tropical Freeze the
They're
the
called
Viking
Snowmads!
the
Yeah.
Snowmads.
They're-
It's the best
Snowmad-
name!
The Snowmad army, and all the Snowmads are
Yeah.
very mean because they're all Vikings, and
And
they
they're
all
from-
have
They're cold-hearted because they're from cold lands.
and they all have like the most ridiculous animations and stuff, and like it's so
Oh, they're great.
They are cool and creative. They're like I said earlier. I have a soft spot for ice stuff, so definitely that struck chord with me. They were all kind of like penguin Viking ice things.
Walrus.
walruses,
stuff.
Yeah.
snow owls.
And they were awesome.
Yeah, dude. Those owls were jerks.
Yeah.
But, like, what's cool, I think, about Tropical Freeze, like, I didn't think Returns so much had it, but Tropical Freeze definitely had a lot of theming going on that was really cool.
Yeah.
Because, like, the first level, you get blasted off from DK Island, and they take it over, and it becomes a snow winterland, like, what they wanted. And then, like, when you go from island to island, you get this feeling that, like, they're industrializing all of these forest jungle areas to make it so like they can make like stuff and sell it or like or eat it, whatever. And it's really cool because like it just reminds me of the first game a lot, where like you have bad guys that have invaded your island and they're taking what resources you have and like making it for their own. And it's really funny in a way because like they take all the fruits and stuff and they make popsicles and
Yeah, the popsicles
great.
are awesome. The
I love
whole last world is ice world, and,
Yes.
and each level is based on the worlds from the first game.
yeah, it's so
that was
cool.
so cool. So yeah, the final world of Tropical Freeze. Like if you played Returns, which some people like might have skipped it, but if
Right.
you play Returns, like each section of DK Isle is like very like different, and then in the last world of Tropical Freeze, each level is based off of like a throwback to one of those Returns like sections of the islands, which is like mind blowing in
And it's
itself.
kind of it
And
takes all those levels and puts them to a theme and puts it in one level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has the coolest Easter egg ever. Like, if you ever played Returns, you probably hate to no end that stupid large bat boss. It's
Yeah.
like a big bat,
Yeah.
and it chases you in the rocket level. It was ridiculously hard. In Tropical Freeze, since the Snowmads took over, you're rocketing through a new rocket level in the same part of the island,
Yep.
and the old bat that probably caused you hundreds and 99 red balloons of death,
Oh, my
he's
God.
like frozen in a block of ice, and he's like,
Yep.
It's so
Yep.
good, and
Yep.
he's like moving. He's trying to get out.
it's like,
It's like,
And
hey,
then-
I'm passing you up, buddy.
And the game does a lot of that. I find like the production value of each level in Tropical Freeze is so far beyond. Like if you look at like New Super Mario Brothers U, like the production quality of just one level of Tropical Freeze has more stuff going on than the entire game of like
It's
the New Super Mario Brothers. Because like you can go through like any single thing in that game has so many different animations, and like each like if you go to like Lion King level,
Yeah.
it like every single shrub
Best
and
old
tree
game.
is dancing, and like that
Yeah,
would
it's
take a lot
having a
of
good
time.
old time.
I
And
think
then-
that's my favorite level in the whole game.
And then a lot of other levels, like they do things that they actually have storytelling in some of the levels. So like there's this level, like I'll use this one as an example first. There's a level where like the entire world you're going through like this jungle full of fruit, and like there are machines and stuff picking out the
Yeah.
fruit, and like one level it's like harvesting the fruit, and the other level it's like them carrying the fruit and like transporting it through this river, and then the next one it's like they're cutting it up in a machine, and then finally it leads up to the final boss fight where it produces like a single popsicle, and then Donkey Kong accidentally kicks into the water full of piranhas, and the whole reason the boss wants to fight you is because you knocked down his popsicle, which is hilarious.
Oh my!
But,
and it was so
it's the
good.
best boss. That's such a good boss too.
And there's another.
You feel like a jerk for it too. Like, oh man, I didn't mean to do that.
There's another really cool storytelling thing in the game that I picked up on too. Like all the enemies, like if you're playing through the game, and the penguins, they shoot like fish as arrows. And it's like, oh yeah, they're Viking fish. They shoot fish as arrows. But then you get to a level, and the whole level, throughout the entire level of the background, the villains are like moving and they're animated and telling a story. It's like it shows them getting ready to catch the fish, then it shows them catching the fish, and then there are giant fish that are wrecking them up, and like then they start throwing fish at each other, and they're having like a food fight in the background of the levels. Like there's so many unique models in this game, like doing stuff, and like the whole level demonstrates how the penguins came in and started overfishing this place, and then the level right after that, it's like one of those specific camera levels where you cannon through like a gorge, and so as you go from cannon to cannon, there are a million penguins, and they're all shooting those fish at you that they just caught in the level right before. So like there's a lot of like interconnectivity. Like the game does like. It kind of themes the enemies, and like you kind of get a sense of how they're interacting with the world in each level, because there's so many like unique models in the background just interacting with the world, showing it's like we industrialized your world, because like in Donkey Kong Country 1 it's like this is a factory, it's here and it's probably ruining the island, but in Tropical Freeze a lot of times like it shows what the enemies are doing is like whether they're like overfishing or taking the island's fruit or messing with the wildlife and stuff, or sometimes the wildlife messes back with them. Like there are levels where like the penguin will be walking and then a giant plants will just eat it, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then there's like the level where all the enemies are in like the desert level, and then a tornado happens, so all the enemies are flying at you from the background because this tornado is like kicking their butt. Like you really get a sense of like nature versus the enemies versus Donkey Kong, and it's so cool.
Like VZed said in the first game, there were a couple times where it's just you had to stop and go, whoa, that's crazy. Tropical Freeze did that for me in almost every level. It's insane.
Dude, it is consistent how over the top this game is. And it is amazing. Like you want to replay the level just to catch it all. Like, oh, did I miss any cool things? Like, it's awesome.
The sawmill.
Sounds like I should play this game.
But okay, before we talk any more Tropical Freeze, we talk about the upgrades they brought to the game. Like what kind of new stuff they brought, because they did some really cool stuff. Mostly bringing back my girl Dixie.
They got rid of the Wiimotes.
The motion controls.
No more waggle. Yeah. Fantastic. Then they brought back. They were like, how can we improve? Because they at this point, like Returns kind of wanted to improve on the old Donkey Kong Country. So how did Tropical Freeze improve? Now the first step that they took was they were like, we want to make this like Donkey Kong Country faithful. So they brought back the old composer from the old games, and he hadn't been like involved in video game music forever. Like those, when did the trilogy come out? Like
94, 95, 96.
Like that was so long ago, and since then, like I think he worked maybe on some of the Game Boy ports of those games, and that was it. He had just not done video game music, and somehow they got him back to do the music of Tropical Freeze, and it's unbelievable to like you listen to the soundtrack of that game and you're like, this guy has still got it. Why did they ever let it? Why did he ever leave? Because there's so many standout, like, iconic songs in that game, whether it's, like, the Windmill song, and there are remixes of, like, old songs.
Yep.
And,
they bring back Lockjaw. They
bring back Lockjaw, which is one of my favorites, and I was so happy because I wasn't even sure if that would ever get remade. And the Lockjaw level is my favorite level in the game. Oh my gosh! But
Perry,
I'll let Perry talk more about like how they brought back the Kong buddies and how
you were saying Dixie. They brought back Dixie.
They brought back.
And straight up Cranky Kong. I was excited
Cranky
about that.
is a brand new character you can play as, and he brings a whole new dimension to the game. Because instead of giving, I guess we should explain. If you're playing single player, you have a partner, and instead of just like walking behind you, they ride DK's back.
Yep. And
typically they give you another like kind of jump bonus. Like Diddy will give you a little jetpack, like extra hang time. Dixie will float up. And Cranky will use his crane, and you get to jump all the way down to the ground and then bounce up. Kind of like DuckTales. And that kind of changes a lot of the dynamics of what Donkey Kong is and like level design and everything. And it's really, really exciting to watch, especially if you see speedrunners, because they mostly use Cranky because you can like you can bounce and then like roll, and you'll keep the momentum, and you'll be going crazy fast through these like insane levels, and it is some of the coolest stuff to watch.
Yeah, they've done a lot of cool stuff with like game mechanics. Like another thing that they did is like in the old games, if you threw a barrel against a wall and it ricocheted back, you could jump on it, and then your Kong would be like all like Looney Tunes, like running on the barrel, like oh my god, I'm running on the barrel. In Donkey Kong, like Tropical Freeze, they're just like, you know what? That's cool. Let's just give the player to do that anytime they want if they have both.
Oh, Kongs. Right,
That's an they're like because
that's the role.
You can do that in DK3 actually.
It keeps like momentum, and it lets you like skip on the water. And then they also added like each Kong has its own abilities, and like it really lets you play different levels different ways. Not only in the terms there are collectibles that certain characters can only get, there are secret exits that only certain characters can get, and like another way that they really improve the game. Because, like, you think about, like, the Wii U, and it's like, how can we bring a franchise to the Wii U? It's a new piece of hardware. How can we improve on it? Like, what makes Tropical Freeze different that it couldn't be done on the Wii? And, like, a lot of people were, like, expecting, they're like, what are we going to do with the tablet? But the way that they improved the game, I feel it was a lot more faithful to, like, the older Donkey Kong Country games, and, like, they targeted a lot of, like, the speedrunning community was because, in Tropical Freeze, every level can be played with a time trial mode on, and it lets you view the world record runtimes for that level through the game itself, through an online server. Because the Wii U, it's not just about the tablet; it's now like this online gaming. Like it's a system, it's Nintendo that can do online gaming. So they let you view like the world record runtimes, and suddenly you watch other players, and you watch all the secrets that they do, how to beat the world in record times. And like if you do time trials, it's not just like you can get it and you can get a bronze medal or a silver medal or a gold medal. So like you still win even if you don't get like the best time in the entire world, which is very hard to do. And like seeing how like they utilize the different Kongs for different like ILs, which is individual level records. Like it's crazy the amount of depth that each level has, and like the whole game, it was designed from the like. Whereas the other Donkey Kong Country games, you can speedrun them through really fast just because the game mechanics are good. Tropical Freeze had levels that were designed from the get-go, with the intention of we want players to be able to complete these levels in different ways. One of which being able to explore the level. Two of which, like, maybe they're just cautious and they're playing the level for the first time and they want to play through, like, brain surgery. Be careful, jump from platform to platform. But if you look at, like, the way the levels are played through speedrunning, it's very apparent that levels were also designed with platforms, like, specifically, like, edited perfectly in place for, like, well, if a person wants to jump from this platform to this platform to this platform, they can. However, if they want to, like, roll jump off of this thing, it puts them perfectly in position so that we'll put, like, an owl or an enemy floating in the air over here where they would land, so that that player can then time a jump off of that owl to get boosted height, to get up to the other enemy above it, and, like, keep the momentum going through this whole string. So, like, they were very, like... They designed levels with the intention of having, like, speedrunning routes, which a lot of people, even playing through the game for the first time, it may not even like apply to them. They may not even be able to recognize it. But then when you realize how like perfectly placed everything is for these alternate like speedrunning routes, it's like you really have a lot more respect for the level developers and be like, wow, these guys like put a lot of effort into making these levels have so many like levels of depth and can be played in different ways. Like it's
Jolly.
You know what you're talking about, I'll give you that.
You straight up summed it all up.
But you forgot to mention Rambi, so woo!
Actually, that's a good. I don't want to transition out of Tropical Freeze, but I do want to end our talk with how do we want to see Donkey Kong?
There's still more to talk about Tropical Freeze.
No. How do we want to see Donkey Kong Country improve in the future?
I want to see Retro not give up because they've done such a fantastic job. And here's the other thing. Sorry if I'm like hogging the Tropical Freeze discussion all to myself.
I'll give you one more major point, Jolly.
One more major point, and then I'll let you. I want you guys' opinions on this. So in Tropical Freeze, one of the ways they made 100%ing the game more worth it, besides unlocking the secret super duper hard mode,
right,
is the jiggies in that game, or the puzzle pieces that you unlock in every level. They unlock concept art for unused content in the games. And part of me suspects that like they put so much effort into making all these levels animated with stuff going on in the background that I understand that making another level they would have had to, like with all the new characters, like there's pictures and stuff that you can lock of like a level that's like hippo hop, and you're hopping off like hippos in a river, and there's another one where you're like on a kettle surfing down like a snow hill, and like there's so much stuff they would have had to like make going on in the background for all these levels, and they probably, I almost suspect that Tropical Freeze, as amazing as it is, was unfinished in the sense that they had so much more that they wanted to include in the game, and they just didn't have enough time to do it. But the game is so good, and they respect like the players like enough to know that the game is still like a complete product, that they allow you to see all the content that you didn't get to touch. They're like, here's all the uncut like project, like the stuff that wasn't in the game, and here's pictures of it, and they draw like pictures and diagrams on how it would have functioned. And you look at that, and then you look at all the ideas of the stuff that wasn't even included in Tropical Freeze, and you're just like, I want another game where I can do all of this. Like,
See,
it's like I want another.
When I looked at it, I didn't really care for the concept art or whatever. I just was like, oh, it unlocks that? Well, that's kind of pointless to me. But that's a good point, because it's stuff... I didn't know that it was cut content. I thought it was, like, stuff in the development process of the stuff that was already
it's all stuff... It's all, like, ideas for new levels that they weren't even in the game. And, like, a lot of... I think it says a lot about how, like, Retro, like, as a developer, when, like, a lot of games, like, if you have cut content, you can't let anyone know about that, because people will like point fingers and be like, you're just cutting content for DLC, and you're just not finishing your game on time. And Retro, like, obviously there is no Tropical Freeze DLC coming anytime soon. They just respected themselves to know that they had a complete product, but they also wanted fans to know it's like, here's something really cool that you can see and appreciate. Here's stuff that didn't make it into the game and ideas we had. And I honestly think, I know a lot of people want Retro to make Prime, and I think Metroid Prime is a franchise that I really like as well, and I would really like to see them do that, but I think that Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is like such an amazing game, and it would be a shame. Like, I really hope that Retro gets to make their own trilogy, because I would really like to see how they could improve. Like, what else can they possibly add to Tropical Freeze? Like, I want to see. They definitely, I think, earn another shot.
I wouldn't be surprised if they would. I would assume anyway that they probably are working on a third one, or that's probably.
If they did a Metroid trilogy, they could probably do a Donkey Kong trilogy.
I hope it's a trilogy. I don't want them to end on Tropical Freeze, because Tropical Freeze to me was like the penultimate. It was like DKC2.
It's like the DKC2 of the new ones. That's a good way to put it.
So then we get a slightly disappointing third installment, and then we can move on to something else.
Exactly. That's exactly what I want. Yeah, so I can just be like, okay, I'm good.
Harry, what if Retro gets another shot with Donkey Kong Country, but they're allowed to use Kremlins this time?
Yo.
So that's for me. Like, there are two things I want to see in DKC in the future: the return of Kremlings, and more animal buddies.
Where are the animal buddies? Are they dead? Like, what happened to them?
Ramby's the only one.
Why is Ramby the survivor?
Squawks is in the game, but he's not playable.
Yeah, well, Squawks is actually really helpful, though.
Give me a water level with On Guard, dude. Seriously.
Yeah, seriously! On Guard makes the water level.
I knew it was coming. I was hoping so much On Guard was going to be in Tropical Freeze.
Yeah,
they had an entire world for underwater levels, and no On Guard, and I was so mad.
Yeah, that's a good point, man.
Dude, like, animal buddies, man. Bring them back.
They made the older games so much more fun, because it's like, ooh, I get to play as a new character that has different abilities and stuff. But like when you play as Ramby in Tropical Freeze, you feel like a powerhouse. Like that very last level where you're just knocking ice around, making platforms. You're like, I'm invincible. It's amazing. I want more of that in different ways. That's a really solid improvement. Would be more animal buddies that vary up the gameplay.
What about
I'm not gonna lie, like, as much as I like Returns and I expect I'm going to love Tropical Freeze when I get to it, I kind of really want Retro to work on something else. Because I know they had a bunch of original projects they were working on before Nintendo came along and was just like, okay, you're going to do stuff for us now. And so I think that like there's a lot of potential in there for them to do a ton of other stuff. If they do another Donkey Kong game, that's awesome. But
they had some sci-fi shooting game.
It was Mega Man. They released footage of a game of what they wanted to envision. Like I guess they were going to do a Mega Man game, and it looked like Metroid Prime, where they had like a super realistic Mega Man, and it was ridiculous.
VZed, what do you want?
What I'm saying is, what I want for Donkey Kong in the future is I want another 3D platformer building off of Donkey Kong 64. But I would want it to be built like we're seeing the new Zelda U, like totally open world, huge, expansive. Like, what if Donkey Kong 3D platformer was built like Skyrim? You know, just like gigantic, intricate world to explore, and like tons of puzzles, like a Metroid Prime or Skyrim or Zelda U, like we're seeing in development.
Okay.
I think there's a time and a place for each. I think there's a time and a place for each, and I love the side-scrolling platformer, and I don't want that to go away. I just want to see another 3D platformer with the scope of these sandbox like RPGs that we've been seeing lately. And I think Donkey Kong would be a good place to start, because they already kind of did with Donkey Kong 64.
I don't think they can make it, at least when I think Skyrim, I always think big empty worlds. I think it's important that you need to have worlds that are big, but also have stuff going on in them for a 3D platformer. Like, you need to have very vertical levels and lots of like stuff that you can stumble upon and adventure into, instead of just like a big world full of nothing. It would be the most important thing for me if they made another 3D platformer of Donkey Kong.
I don't know, like, if they're making what you want, like a big, like, Skyrim, like, you can do whatever you want, 3D world, I feel like they would have to really be creative in terms of, like, what kind of stuff you can give Donkey Kong is, like, upgradable powers, or, like, is he going to have a new party of characters or something?
Coconut gun.
But, I mean, like, what can you do with a coconut gun besides shoot it at bad guys? Like, you can't, like, turn into a jetpack or anything.
Hey, Perry.
Like, well, but I mean, there could be any number of things.
It's gonna hurt.
It's gonna hurt. But I mean, there could be any number of cool things. Like, I don't just mean like take Skyrim, put a Donkey Kong skin on it. I mean, like, you know, there's a big world to explore, but you find like a singular mountain, and climbing it is like a half-hour endeavor. You know, and that's like a level.
I don't think we're saying Skyrim Donkey Kong. I think we're saying Donkey Kong 64 too. And I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I can't see it as a big open world. Like, I could see it as DK64 Part 2, where it's kind of like stuff is segregated and stuff. But, like, I can't see it as one big open world. Like, it just seems like it'll be a little weird for Donkey Kong to be able to do that.
They've branched out and done new things before.
I think the ideal game is somewhere in between.
I'll tell you what I want. I want a Donkey Kong fighting game where it's like freaking Primal Rage meets Killer Instinct, but it's Donkey Kong and his friends and bad guys. Dude.
Only if you can play with the bongos.
Added feature bonus.
Smash Bros.
You get an achievement if you beat it with the bongos.
I want to see Donkey Kong beating up Candy Kong. And
yeah.
No, I think she's a little too risque to ever get turned back to Nintendo, even despite what they did with Tiny Kong.
Which is funny. Well, because in 64 she was even more, you know? Yeah, that's funny. Anything else that you want to see in a future DKC title? That is interesting, VZed. I hadn't thought about that. I don't think that's like top of my list of something I want to see, but that would be interesting to see how that could work. Because I think with advancement of technology and everything, they could really do something interesting, and it might be something we've never known that we wanted until we get it, kind of thing, you know.
Okay, so here's an idea. If I was, I'm gonna work off Alex of the 3D platformer. So like, and what I said, I want that, but with more stuff going on in the world. So take like a level example from Tropical Freeze that really had a dynamically changing level that wasn't possible on the older generations of consoles. So like my favorite level in the game, it's it's like the new Lockjaw level. The level starts off and you're swimming through an underwater cavern and it's very ominous, but like every so often there's a tremor or a quake and like a big shadow in the background. You're like, what is going on? And then suddenly a giant kraken bursts through the level, and then the level changes because now you're not just going through a minefield underwater. You have to. You're being chased by a kraken, and then you get to a soft, like a cave, and you think it's safe, and then suddenly he's poking his tentacles through like the cave at you, and then you have to get through out of that, and then suddenly it becomes like a chase back up to the surface, and the mines that you saw from earlier, you have to end up using like to defeat him. So like, the whole level like went through so many like dynamic changes. So I would like to see like more stuff in like a 3D world, like maybe like a Donkey Kong 64 too, if they made one. Like maybe have a lot more like things going on in the world. Like how about a level with like an open world boss fight? Like a boss could like chase you through it, and you have to like go to different areas of the world to like be able to do something against him. you know? Or like have a world that's like affected in different ways. Like what if there's a world and like in the world there's an earthquake and suddenly the world changes and different ways become open. And like Banjo-Tooie did something like that, or Banjo-Kazooie, and it had like the woods level where like the different seasons. So why not like have a Donkey Kong Country level that like maybe it changes between like day and night over time, and at night different enemies come out and they're more dangerous and they attack you. And like at nighttime, different things like different routes and places in the level become more accessible. Like there's a lot of stuff that other games have done that have not been implemented into a 3D platformer yet. And I honestly think like if they wanted to do a 64-2, or like even Playtonic Games is making their Banjo spiritual successor, which is kind of in the same vein. Like in thinking of ways how to expand on like that like 3D platforming genre, you can take ideas like implemented in more current games that haven't, like, because we haven't seen a 3D platformer in so long, and you can take those kinds of ideas, like a world that changes over time with a day-night cycle, or maybe like the seasons but that change in real time, or enemies that impactfully change your surroundings. And you could like implement that into a world, and you could see some like really interesting results. At least that's what I think.
It'd be possible.
So you're talking about Donkey Kong with Skyrim, then, right?
Not exactly.
I feel you. I feel you. It would be interesting to see if that could be pulled off. I know. I think like the thing that we might want is the third, you know, for the tropical freeze, whatever. I think that makes sense. But that's an interesting thought, VZed, of how, I think it's possible. Absolutely. Any other last closing thoughts before we wrap things up?
Thank you, David Weiss, for coming back and doing music for Donkey Kong Country Returns.
He's listening, so that's a personal.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Retro, for doing good work.
Yeah,
Retro. Like, there's so many game companies nowadays that like I feel like they want to throw out like a watered down rush product, and I'm so glad that they made Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze, and they really made them faithful to the original games while also being a new experience. Which is, like, as a Donkey Kong Country fan, that's all I could ask for, because, like, it's true. It's amazing.
If nothing else, Returns and Tropical Freeze are, like, a testament to the quality that Nintendo is still dedicated to. And even though Nintendo might be, like, suffering for it, they are still, like, the premier developers out there who are trying to, you know, make games that are just fun and good and uncompromisingly quality, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I think those two games especially are, like, Nintendo and their inner circle are like where it's at when it comes to just classic good gaming experiences. So.
Yeah, man.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on the fence about a Wii U, you should buy one and play Tropical Freeze.
There's no reason not to buy a Wii U anymore.
I got
Anybody who says otherwise is just fooling themselves.
I got one for Tropical Freeze, and I'm really glad that I did, because obviously now there's so much more as well.
Yeah, the Tropical Freeze, and like it's not a Donkey Kong Country game, but Rayman Legends, another ace quality platform.
It's funny because there's obviously I made Donkey Kong month because I love Donkey Kong. Like there's no franchise that I would buy a console for, unlike the Donkey Kong series. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if we did this at the beginning of the episode. If we didn't really. I know we did it for the first episode, but not for this second episode of the new Donkey Kong Country games. We didn't introduce our channels or who we were.
Plug time.
If you want to end as shameless, I don't know.
Yeah,
can I say this word? Can I say that word on the snoCast?
Because we're going to end with an end slate here with videos of each of us and all that fun stuff. So absolutely, yeah. Let's end with that real quick. Well, thank you all for being on. First of all, very much.
Thanks for having me on the JjaliGoat.
No, I couldn't think of a better group of you three to talk about, because I know we all love DK so very much. So thank you all for being on. We're the DK crew. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. Three of you can give us your plugs.
I'm Alec, aka VZed from I Like Video Games, and I do videos on Donkey Kong and other games.
Mostly Donkey Kong, though.
There was a time when he was the Donkey Kong guy.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm Perrydactyl. You should follow me on Twitter and Facebook. It's Perrydactyl Show. I make all sorts of kind of videos, some that are about good games, some about bad games. But I can guarantee you it will be hype.
Jolly from DjaliGoat. I'm on Twitter and I have a YouTube channel. I do a Nuzlocke, and I'm also trying to make a new video series on talking about new stuff on the Wii U. So hopefully I'll have some more stuff out by then.
And it's good. It's good, man. Talking about how the Wii U can improve using that tablet. It's good stuff.
Yeah, thanks.
You can check out the last snoCast episode here. That will be... Well, maybe I'll link this one to part 1 of DK, the DK one probably. But another quick note just about the snoCast for the viewers. This is just funny. I randomly just checked on Reddit, and I was like, I wonder if I should make a Snowman Gaming subreddit. And someone already did. A big fan of the stream and channel, Mortal Reaper, made our Snowman Gaming, which is hilarious and awesome, all at the same time. So
what a guy.
Yeah, what a guy. And so
there's no cast like snoCast.
No cast like snoCast. The only post in that subreddit, as right now when I'm speaking, is snoCast ideas for future casts. So if you ever have ideas for future snoCast, put them in that little thread there, and there's lots of different stuff that we could do and talk about. So thank you to my guests one last time, Perry, Jolly, and VZed, and we'll see you guys on the next snoCast. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but it's going to be something. I hope you enjoyed Donkey Kong Month as well. That was something.
Hypest month ever.
You could say it was bananas.
Get out.
All right.
Thank you guys for watching. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.